You're at a party, and someone walks up to you. So, how's the weather been? And instantly, you feel it. That tightness in your chest, that sudden fatigue, that overwhelming urge to find an excuse, any excuse, to leave the conversation. It's not rudeness. It's not social anxiety. It's not even that you don't like people. It's something else entirely. There's a type of person who finds small talk almost painful, who would rather sit in comfortable silence than exchange pleasantries about traffic or weekend plans, who feels their energy draining with every "how are you" and "nice weather we're having." And psychology has a name for what's happening inside them, a rare form of cognitive depth that most people never develop. Let's start with what small talk actually is. On the surface, it seems harmless enough. Weather, sports, traffic, the universal script we've all memorized for navigating social situations without making anyone uncomfortable. But here's what researchers have discovered. A 2010 study published in Psychological Science found something fascinating. Psychologist Matthias Mell tracked conversations of nearly 80 participants over 4 days. The results? People who engaged in more substantive conversations, discussions about philosophy, personal struggles, meaningful ideas, reported significantly higher levels of well-being than those who stuck to small talk. But that's not even the interesting part. The interesting part is this: some people weren't just neutral about small talk. They actively avoided it. And when forced to engage in it, they showed signs of genuine psychological discomfort. Their cortisol levels rose, their energy depleted, their minds elsewhere. Now, you might think this is just introversion, that people who hate small talk are simply socially anxious or prefer solitude. But that's not quite it, because some of the most socially skilled people you know, people who are warm, empathetic, deeply connected to others, also despise small talk. They don't hate conversation, they hate shallow conversation. And psychology suggests this aversion isn't a weakness or a social deficit. It's actually a marker of something rare. So what's actually happening in the brain of someone who can't stand small talk? Psychologists have identified a personality dimension called need for cognition. Essentially, the degree to which a person is motivated to engage in effortful thinking. People high in need for cognition don't just enjoy thinking, they need it. The way some people need coffee, or exercise, or human touch. They're drawn to complexity, nuance, ideas that require turning over in your mind, like a puzzle you can't quite solve. And here's the thing about small talk. It offers none of that. When someone with high need for cognition engages in small talk, their brain essentially goes into standby mode. The parts of their prefrontal cortex that light up during deep thinking barely activate. It's like asking a Formula One driver to navigate a parking lot at 5 miles per hour. Technically possible, but deeply, almost physically frustrating. But there's more to it than cognitive preference. There's an emotional component too. Dr. John Cacioppo, who pioneered research on loneliness at the University of Chicago, found that people who crave depth in conversation aren't just seeking intellectual stimulation. They're seeking genuine human connection. And small talk feels like a barrier to that connection, not a bridge to it. Think about it. When you ask someone, "How are you?" in passing, you're not really asking. You're performing a social ritual. The expected answer is, "Good, thanks, you?" Even if everything is falling apart. But people who hate small talk, they don't want the performance. They want the truth. They want to know, what are you actually thinking? What keeps you up at night? What do you believe about the world? What hurts you? What makes you feel alive? These aren't questions for cocktail party chit-chat, but to certain minds, these are the only questions worth asking. Research suggests people high in existential intelligence, the capacity to contemplate deep questions about human existence, experience small talk as almost offensive. Not because they're judging the other person, but because it feels like a waste of the brief, precious time we have to actually know each other. So if you've ever felt guilty about ducking out of small talk, if you've ever worried there's something wrong with you because you'd rather stay home than attend a networking event where everyone asks what you do for a living, you're not broken. You're just wired for depth. And in a world that runs on surface-level interaction, that can feel incredibly lonely. Here's what's interesting, though. This aversion to small talk, it's not universal. In fact, it's deeply cultural. Take Finland, for example. Finnish culture values what they call comfortable silence. Finns don't feel the need to fill every gap in conversation with noise. Silence isn't awkward. It's respectful, thoughtful. Small talk in Finnish culture can actually be seen as superficial, even insincere. Throughout history, the people who changed the world, philosophers, writers, scientists, artists, often had a documented distaste for superficial conversation. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, believed that modern society's obsession with extroversion and constant social performance was making people psychologically sick. He wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself." Read that again. You can be surrounded by people, at a party, in an office, at a family gathering, and still feel profoundly alone, because no one is talking about anything that matters. The writer Susan Cain points out that Western culture underwent a massive shift in the early 20th century. We moved from what she calls a culture of character to a culture of personality. Suddenly, being quiet, introspective, or preferring depth over breadth was seen as a flaw. Small talk became the norm, and people who craved something more started to feel like outsiders. But maybe, just maybe, they're not outsiders at all. Maybe they're the ones still holding space for what we lost. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah is 34. She works in marketing. She's good at her job, creative, insightful, respected by her colleagues. But if you ask Sarah how she really feels about work, she'd tell you the hardest part isn't the deadlines or the clients. It's the small talk. The Monday morning check-ins. The lunch break conversations about TV shows she doesn't watch. The after-work drinks where everyone talks loudly about nothing. It's not that Sarah doesn't like people. She has a few close friends, people she can talk to for hours about philosophy, psychology, the nature of consciousness. With them, she feels alive, seen, real. But at work, at networking events, she feels like she's performing a role, and it exhausts her. Sarah told me something once that stayed with me. She said, "Small talk feels like holding my breath. I can do it for a while, but eventually, I need air." Sarah once tried to explain this to a colleague who kept insisting she should put herself out there more. She said, "Imagine you're really hungry, not just peckish, actually hungry, and someone keeps offering you empty plates. They're beautiful plates, sure, but there's nothing on them. Would you keep accepting them just to be polite?" Her colleague didn't get it. But if you're someone who hates small talk, you know exactly what she meant. Because that's what small talk feels like. Empty plates. Pretty, expected, but offering no nourishment. Now, let's be honest about something. This trait, this hunger for depth, this allergy to superficiality, it's not always an advantage. Sometimes it's a curse. Because here's the reality. Small talk serves a function. It's how most people connect initially. It's how friendships begin. It's how you signal approachability. And if you refuse to engage in it, or if you visibly struggle with it, people might misread you. They might think you're cold, arrogant, unfriendly. When the truth is, you're just waiting for the conversation to go somewhere real. And over time, that distance becomes isolation. But here's the other side. The people who can't tolerate small talk, they're often the ones capable of the most profound connections. They're the friends who remember what you said 6 months ago about your fear of failure. They're the ones who ask, "How are you really?" and wait for the true answer. They're the people you call at 2 a.m. when everything falls apart, because you know they won't offer empty platitudes. They'll sit with you in the darkness. Research from the University of Arizona found that people who engage in more substantive conversations, who skip the small talk and go straight to what matters, develop closer relationships faster. They also report feeling more understood, more supported, more genuinely known. Because depth creates intimacy. And intimacy, that's what we're all actually looking for. Not more conversations, more connection. So yes, hating small talk can be isolating, but it can also be a compass. It tells you who your people are. The ones who don't flinch when you skip the script. The ones who meet your depth with their own. So what does all of this mean? If you're someone who finds small talk painful, if you've ever felt guilty for not being good at casual conversation, let me tell you what psychology says about you. You're not broken. You're not socially inept. You're not too serious, too intense, too much. You're cognitively complex. You're driven by depth. And in a world optimized for breadth, for speed, for surface level everything, that's actually rare. Most people skim the surface of life. They have 100 acquaintances and few real friends. They talk constantly, but say very little. You're different. You're not interested in collecting connections. You're interested in cultivating them. You don't want 1,000 shallow conversations. You want 10 conversations that change how you see the world. The world needs people like you. People who ask the questions no one else dares to ask. People who refuse to mistake performance for connection. So the next time someone tries to engage you in small talk, and you feel that familiar tightness, that urge to escape, remember, you're not being difficult. You're protecting something precious. The capacity for real connection. And that is worth protecting. Small talk has its place, but so does silence. So does depth. So do the conversations that make you lose track of time. Because you finally found someone who speaks your language. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your experience. Drop a comment. Tell me, when was the last time you had a conversation that felt real? And if you want more explorations like this into the psychology of the things we don't usually talk about, subscribe. Because there's so much more beneath the surface, and you deserve conversations that go there.